Welcome to the Fancy a Brew podcast. I'm Andy the Northern Diver. In this series I'll be discussing adventure, conservation and progression in scuba diving with some really interesting and inspirational divers that you might or not have heard of. The podcast is supported by Northern Diver International and you the listener through Patreon. So grab yourself a brew and enjoy this week's episode. Hi, welcome along to the first special bonus edition of the podcast this season. Maybe the last, fingers crossed. And in this episode, it's quite different because this is all about something that I've been planning. It's called the Expedition Western Ecology Tour, or Expedition Wet, as some of you on Instagram might have seen. And it's basically a tour of the western coast of the UK, starting off in Scotland, on the northwest coast, diving two sea locks, that's Loch Duick and Loch Arran, with Dr. Lauren Smith and Chris Rickard, two names that may be familiar to you if you've listened to the podcast before. They've been on talking about the Shark and Skate Citizen Science Scotland group that's on Facebook and all about flapper skates. I'll introduce both of them in a minute and they'll talk about the project and what they're both going to bring to the party as part of the expedition. Second of all, then we're going to move down to North Wales, diving with Jake Davies, who's been on the podcast as well. And he's going to be showing us around some of the areas that he works with, the Project Seagrass. Then we're going to move down to Pembrokeshire and be diving with Charlie Young and Lloyd Jones. And we're going to be supporting Neptune's army of rubbish cleaners known as NARC, who we also had on the podcast last year with David Kennard. And we were looking at rubbish dumps, sites that have got cast fishing gear, so whether it's looking for weights and lines from anglers that are on the shore, or cast fishing nets and lobster pots that have been lost out at sea. And hopefully we're going to recover quite a bit of them. So we've booked a boat to take the stuff out of the water for us and a skip to recover it all and get it put away to somewhere it should be. So without further ado, let's get all the expedition members on. Going to introduce themselves, let us know what they're up to, who they are if you've not heard about them before, and what they're going to be doing as part of the expedition. So Dr. Lauren Smith, welcome back. I think you're the first person that's been on 3 times on my podcast. So welcome back.
Thanks, yeah. In case you missed it, my name's Lauren Smith and I'm a marine biologist and coastal ecologist who specialises in elasmobranch research. And I'm going to be forming part of the team in northwest Scotland. And we're going to be showcasing some of the incredible dive sites in Loch Arran and also Loch Duick as part of the Western Ecology Tour. These dive sites have an incredible array of species that are accessible from the shoreline. And Loch Arran itself is of particular interest with the reports of sightings of both adult and juvenile flapper skates. Now, flapper skates are actually critically endangered, and it was my colleague Chris Rickard who first discovered an egg-laying site in the inner sound of Skye in late 2019. And since then, Chris and I have been working on consolidating sightings of flapper skates and their egg cases, as well as other sharks and skates found around the Scottish coastline. Earlier this year, we formed a working group called Shark and Skate Citizen Science Scotland, with the aim of engaging the general public, beachgoers, as well as anglers, divers and snorkelers to submit sightings and to ask for help with identification and to just disseminate information about the shark and skate species that we have in our waters. The Western Ecology Tour is a great opportunity to spread the word about our citizen science group and also to engage with the rest of the team about their ongoing projects. Hopefully, as a team overall, we can raise awareness about the amazing species, habitats, and their conservation around our coastline.
Since me and you have talked, I've obviously joined that Facebook group. And it's like every day now someone's finding a new egg case, aren't they, and putting it on, and it's certainly building up that citizen science thing. It's really good.
Yeah, exactly. It's a total slow burn, it's just a Facebook group at the moment, but word is getting out and people are starting to sort of report sightings. It will be interesting in Loch Arran because I don't know if he said, but the reason me and Chris went across the other day was because there'd been an adult photographed right on like that dive we do, and they'd reported seeing juveniles. Now we saw the photograph of the adults and we can verify that was correct. The juveniles they didn't manage to photograph any of. Don't know, they were talking about whatever camera setup they had on, which they couldn't get a clear photo or something, but they said it was either 1 in one juvenile that they saw repeatedly, or it was like several hanging about. So like Chris got told about this. I was like, oh, should we go across? So we went across. Obviously, didn't see any. That just seems to be standard. But we did have like the best like conditions that we've ever had to dive it. So it definitely wasn't a wasted trip. But the point is that it's just pure luck, they could be there. And like I'm excited as well because usually it's just me and Chris, and you can't have eyes everywhere. So like to have more of us in the water, you just never know. Like you never know what we might got. So yeah, it's interesting.
So there's certainly going to be plenty of us in the water to sort of cast an eye over these dive sites to see what we can see and find and whatever. And with you, obviously, you've got your sort of partner in crime, Chris. Welcome back to the podcast, mate. I saw a couple of the pictures that Lauren took a couple of weeks back. They're flipping amazing, mate. I'm so excited to get there.
Yeah, and you know what? Lauren's a hopeless photographer as well. So no, it's an amazing site. I'm really looking forward to showing you guys around it. It's going to be great.
So do you want to give us a quick recap about what's going on up there, what your role is in all this, mate, and for those that don't know who you are?
Yeah, hi, thank you. So my name's Chris Rickard, and I'm one half of the comedy duo, which is the Shark and Skate Citizen Science Scotland group. My colleague, Dr. Lauren Smith, the other half. Basically 3 years ago or so, Lauren and I started talking about the possibility of trying to find out a little bit more about one of our most elusive and endangered elasmobranchs, which is the flapper skate. Used to be known as the common skate, but that's been split into two different species now, the flapper skate and the blue skate. And the flapper skate used to be common, very, very common, hence the old name common skate, all across the UK and the Mediterranean and some of the Scandic countries as well. And it's basically extinct through most of its former range. There's just a few pockets left known now. One in the inner Sound of Skye and small pockets up in Orkney as well. And adults are caught off Ireland too. So we quite quickly discovered that one of the best forms of finding out information is basically talking to people. So we set up a Facebook page that we were able to try and gather information off locals and fishermen and anglers, etc. And it's going really well. We're actually making up a map of sightings for adults, juveniles, purses on the beaches and in situ as well. And really quite pleased that it's coming on, but it would be great to get a little bit more exposure basically for an animal which is critically endangered. It's actually more at risk of extinction than the giant panda. So we're very pleased to say that the site in the Inner Sound, which is now the largest known or the densest known population of flapper purses anywhere in the world. So it's a pretty special place. And we're pleased to see it's got some protection. So we're very chuffed with that. So yeah, I'm going to be hoping to act as dive guide for you guys that haven't been up to the north of Scotland before. West coast of Scotland's just got some fantastic diving. Basically, we could have gone virtually anywhere on the west coast of Scotland and we'd be getting some oohs and ahs off you, I'm sure. Some of you have probably spent some time up there already, but Loch Carron in particular and Loch Duich, the two sites we're going to visit in this tour, both have very special places in my heart. They're the easiest place for me to get to on the west coast, living on the east coast of Scotland, and I do it as a regular day trip. 5, 6, 7 times a year we go over and spend a couple of dives there and come home again in the same day. So we'll be taking to Loch Carron and Loch Duich, totally different. They're only about half an hour apart. Loch Carron is a shallow sill entrance through the narrows of Loch Carron, so there's a huge current runs through there, which means loads and loads of water movement, which means tons of plankton, tons of food for all the animals, so there's tons of life. It's an amazing place to dive, as long as you enjoy a drift dive. It's also one of the few places in the UK that you can do a drift dive from the shore and enter and exit at the same place, or almost the same place. You can park at the same spot, enter from one side of an island, drift right the way around it and come out the other side. So hopefully we'll be doing that as one of our dives. Loch Duich, very different. It's a muddy, very slow movement water. So very, very muddy, very dark and full of weird and wonderful things. You never know what you're going to find in Loch Duich. There's all kinds of weird stuff that you don't see in shallow water usually. So you literally never know what you're going to see. So sea monsters galore in Loch Duich. So I'm looking forward to showing you guys all around our two of our impressive Scottish sea lochs.
When we've chatted offline about where we're going to dive and the sort of dive sites we're going to go on, your enthusiasm for these dive sites, mate, is making like the hairs stand up on the back of my neck. I'm so sort of excited to get there and get my camera in the water and hopefully get, quite a catalogue of images of some of the most phenomenal sort of flora and fauna that's in there. I can't wait. So see you Friday morning, mate. Thanks. Finally, up in Scotland, we've got Ross, who's coming up for one day because unfortunately he's a teacher and he's having to do a bit of graft the first day of diving. But you're going to come and meet us, aren't you, for day 2, which is probably going to be the better day looking at the tides. So what's your story, Ross? Oh, and welcome back, by the way. Thanks for coming back on the podcast again.
I don't know. I'll be honest. I just want to come and meet people that are like-minded. To be honest with you, I just want to come and meet normal divers that want to get involved in projects that are actually taking part in the UK. You see all these things abroad, but I want to see things that are happening in our waters right here. Things that highlight what we've got. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's to meet people from around the country. When you're out diving, you tend to dive with the same people, and you tend to, you see the same faces at the dive sites. So it's nice to actually meet folk from, all walks of life and all walks of diving as well, I suppose, because everyone that seems to be coming has a slightly different experience level, have a slightly different, I suppose, expertise and stuff like that. So it's an opportunity to kind of meet up with folk and network, get to know other folk from around the country, build relationships and build friendships, basically. I think that is genuinely one of the main reasons. I thought it was a cracking idea. Obviously, with the work for the BBC, it's kind of slowed down a little bit recently, just with the way life's going and that. But it gives me ideas to maybe push on my own ideas, to maybe get that creative juice flowing again. I found like the last few months it's kind of weaned away slightly, and I've been kind of pushing things to the side slightly and going, I'll do it later. But it gives you an opportunity to like speak to yourself and speak to Lauren and speak to the rest of the guys, and ideas that they've maybe got and things, experiences that they've got, and thinking, oh, maybe that's something that we can look at up this way. Do you know what I mean? I've been watching some of the videos that the guys in Wales have been doing, and they're absolutely phenomenal. I mean, they are genuinely brilliant. I'd love to be able to do something like that up here in Scotland, and that's one of the things that I've been trying to kind of push with the BBC just before we come out of lockdown. There, maybe trying to get something that showcases up here, whether it's on the BBC Scotland channel or whether it's maybe a slightly longer, like a series, like a mini series on the BBC iPlayer for BBC The Social, like kind of Underwater Scotland or Scotland Underwater was the idea. And this will give me the chance to kind of bounce ideas off of you guys and see how other folk do it. Because at the end of the day, I ain't no expert in anything. So you learn from everybody, and you always learn from new folk. You never stop learning. And the minute you think that you're good at something, then that's the minute that I think maybe it's time to take your finger out and work a little bit harder, if that makes sense.
Yeah, mate. Defo. Well, thanks for that. Thanks for coming on. I'll see you soon. So we've also got, tagging along for the entire trip, we've got Ollie and Hannah. Welcome back, Ollie. This is your third time on here, and Hannah, first time. Welcome.
Hi, mate. Yeah. No, I've been on before with you, so I won't speak too much about my other stuff because we did a whole podcast on me and what I've been up to. So people can go and listen to that. Yeah. So we're both coming along on the expedition, and for me, I'm coming along to help obviously film the expedition. Document as much as we can the whole trip and where we're going and which projects we're supporting. Possibly I'll be able to work with Felicity on that a little bit. We're both in that sort of area. So yeah, for me, that's what are we doing. Scotland, I've dived a few times before, mostly for work up in the sort of far north, Ullapool, which I think is even further north than we're going. Wales, quite a lot of diving there. Working over there with Jake and Lloyd, who are also on the expedition. So the last year we've been filming our own series that we created about Welsh diving specifically. It includes a couple of the sites that we're actually going to be going to. So the Seagrass in North Wales, and then a couple of the sites in South Wales in Pembrokeshire as well. So yeah, maybe another month or so that will be out.
I've already seen the trailer for that, and it looks flipping phenomenal, mate. I'm envious of your video style, so hopefully we can replicate that in some form with this expedition. So Hannah, welcome to my podcast. I don't think we've met yet, but we certainly spoke a couple of times about this expedition. So welcome, mate. Thanks for coming.
I don't know how to follow that, to be honest. So I'm a marine ecologist based in York with Ollie. My background is I've got a degree in animal biology and a Master of Research degree in endangered species recovery and conservation. My passion for the marine environment probably started in my undergraduate. So I went to South Africa to study great white sharks for my dissertation. And that's actually how we met. So all those years ago. So it's quite a special place for us, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been absolutely obsessed with sharks ever since. And it's hard to put into words that moment when I first actually saw a great white shark for myself. And I think you would agree. Yeah, it was a pivotal moment for me, especially personally, because it enlightened a desire to travel, shark conservation, and all of that really. So that's where it all started for me. For my Master of Research degree, I studied the artisanal fisheries in southern Mozambique. So we looked at the ecological and biological characteristics. So in other words, what species of sharks were being caught, what size were they sexually mature, what kind of fishing methods were being used. So that was a really interesting study that I did. Aside from academia, actually, something very important I forgot to say. Just 2 weeks ago, I actually released my first scientific article concerning great white sharks in Mossel Bay in South Africa. So it's very similar to the study I did at bachelor's level, but it was definitely a life goal of mine to have my name on a scientific article concerning great white sharks. So I'm pretty happy with that.
Congratulations, mate. I can just tell you now, Donovan is creaming himself because he's got such a similar sort of history and background and interest in the same sort of thing. So you and him.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah. So we're going to have lots to talk about then.
I bet he can't wait. Look at him smiling there.
Yeah. But in terms of the expedition, so I'm actually working with Finisterre as well. I'm not sure if you're all aware of who Finisterre is. So they're a brand based in Cornwall, and they produce organic and sustainable clothing and accessories for those who love being around the ocean. And so they've got a fantastic range, and they've actually generously donated a £150 voucher towards the raffle. So that's absolutely fantastic. And in exchange for that, I'm going to create a blog series talking about the expedition and talking about the different projects and taking that imagery and videography and things like that to share as well. And that will be posted on their website once the expedition is complete. Well, I think that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
She's certainly pulled one out the bag getting Finisterre on side, and Neptunic, who've sponsored us as well, but I'll get into that towards the end of the podcast and make sure everyone gets their name dropped there. So next, we've already mentioned him, Donovan. Welcome back, mate. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. And, I love marketing or spreading awareness of the problems that our wildlife faces. So sharks through shark finning and bycatch. I do feel like people always want to go abroad and conserve animals abroad, which, I'm guilty of that as well. The really large megafauna like whale sharks and orangutans, but they forget that we have an incredible array of wildlife around the UK. And I hope to hopefully make people more aware of what it is that we've got and how incredible it is. We do have megafauna like the flapper skates in Scotland, cuckoo wrasse, because people think that every fish that lives around the UK is brown or grey. So it'll be nice to make people more aware of what we've got and what we could lose if we don't put better protections in place to stop these amazing animals from disappearing.
In a nutshell, that's the whole reason why we're doing this expedition, isn't it? To show people what's going on around our local coastlines, why we can't go abroad. So thanks for that, mate. Next up, we've got Felicity Flashman. And I've got to say, everybody who I introduced you to that was coming on the expedition all thought you were going to be some kind of superhero. So tell us about your superhero traits, will you? What are you bringing to the party?
So I'm a wildlife filmmaker specialising in underwater. I've worked in many different locations around the world, kind of from the top of mountains to the ocean. And from all the different types of photography and filmmaking jobs I've had, I've seen how much the world is impacted by the ocean, and vice versa. So I've developed quite a fierce passion to protect our oceans and different water bodies. And I think that it is very important, if you're privileged enough to be able to dive and photograph or film it, that you donate some time to help different charities promote their work. So I'm going to be hopefully filming and photographing the expedition underwater and topside. I also own a drone, so I can help with some drone shots as well. And I'm happy and excited to promote the different charities on my social media, kind of basically spreading the word as much as possible, because I'm sure these charities, like most, will have suffered over the last year or so with COVID happening. So I've done most of my diving in the UK, but I very much enjoy kind of adventure exploration projects. So this is going to be a very good expedition for me, kind of diving in places that I haven't been diving in before, because I've mostly been diving in Cornwall and Devon. So yeah, I'm very excited.
Well, that's certainly better than where I have to go diving at my local quarry and that. So I'm a bit jealous of you, to be fair. But welcome to the team, mate. Nice to see you, and look forward to seeing you next week when you come to ours before we drive up. And then tagging along, we've also got Alex, our primary healthcare clinician, coming with us, the paramedic of the party. Hopefully you're not going to get used, are you?
I'm in the back of an ambulance. I don't know if it's a bit too noisy for you lot or not. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, mate, you're loud and clear. Crack on.
Yeah, so typical NHS worker, I'm afraid. I was meant to finish work at 6 o'clock, and I'm just on my way back from Pinderfields Hospital now to Huddersfield, so I've ended up about 20 miles away from home. I'm not actually available for emergencies at the moment, so it's not like massively faux pas that I'm chatting to you. But yeah, as you can see, I am actually sat in the back of an ambulance at the moment. So yeah, hopefully I'm going to have a great time on this expedition, just enjoying it as a bit of a jolly. Because I'm hoping that you're not going to need me too much. But I will be on hand professionally if required. Outside of that, I've enjoyed recreational diving for a good 8-10 years now. If I'm in the water, I'm happy. So I try with a bit of photography. I'm nowhere near as experienced as some of you guys. I quite like getting into any kind of things. I quite like my macro photography, so going chasing little stuff, muck diving, or wrecks, or even some of, as you say, the flapper skate stuff, kind of like single species stuff that we're looking at doing on this, the seagrass. All sounds like great fun. So as soon as Andy got in touch, I was like, yeah, I'd love to be involved. And even the NARC stuff, I'm up at the Lake District on Saturday working with Lake District divers to do a bit of a clean up on Windermere. So all this type of stuff, it's right up my street. Really looking forward to kind of getting to meet you all and chat, and hopefully I'm just there for some fun and not needed in a professional capacity. That's sort of me, and obviously if I'm there as opposed to Andy, then at least we will see stuff, hopefully, because Andy never sees stuff when he goes away, whereas I always do, don't I?
You're such a knob. We both met up at Basking Shark, Scotland last year, and he stayed for an extra day and a half because he got the ferry back with his car. So saw the only basking shark they had in the entire week. He saw it the day we were driving home. But nonetheless, mate, it'd be good to see you next week. So I look forward to it. I'll see you then. Cheers, pal. Then we're going to move down to North Wales, where we're going to meet up with Jake, who's been on the podcast several times before. And he's going to be promoting and representing the Project Seagrass. So Jake, what can you tell us about Project Seagrass, pal?
Yeah, so as part of this expedition, I'll be leading the element on the Chian Peninsula with Project Seagrass, which is a marine conservation charity dedicated to ensuring that seagrass meadows are protected globally and for the biodiversity and people that depend on them. So again, in Wales, this is where Project Seagrass was born through Swansea University and Cardiff University, and it's where their heart is with a lot of it. Again, I'm a trustee for Project Seagrass and an ambassador for them too. And I've been working with them for the last 6 years. And where we're going to go on the expedition to Portland is one of their almost home patches, let's say, because that's where a lot of the surveys have been done, both intertidally and subtidally. But in recent years, because Portland has been that big seagrass meadow, like one of the biggest and densest off the Welsh coast, it's been a place where it's been a fundamental one really for the seed collection as part of their restoration project they did down in Dale in Pembrokeshire. So every year for the last couple of years, been going there to collect the seeds from the seagrass themselves, and hopefully when we get in the seagrass there in Portland, I can show these seeds at this time of year where they're starting to flower and you can actually see the pods, and it's amazing to see actual seeds in the water. But these little seeds are amazing to think that they can then take them from that meadow, put them in a lab, germinate them there, put them in a little sack, and then put them back in, and that can help them restore a meadow. So yeah, it's been really cool to see how that kind of project's been developing, and hopefully in the next few years can expand on that. And any money or donations that go through part of the expedition will go towards that part of restoring or enhancing some seagrass meadows.
I tell you what would be good if we could actually get some planting done. But I know that they've got a project ongoing, haven't they? They're starting down in Plymouth right now, aren't they? They've been bagging them up and trying to get them out there. But I think COVID's knocked that a little bit for getting people together, because I was going to be part of it. But
so that's a slightly separate one on top of that thing as well for Project Seagrass. Their main one's been in Dale, down in Pembrokeshire, and they were planting 1 hectare is what they managed to do, which was amazing. It's a really cool achievement.
Isn't it nuts though how sort of 10, 15 years ago they were talking about all these rainforests were like the lungs of the world, and now they've realised such a small plant, and isn't it the only true plant in the ocean?
So it's the only true plant, which is amazing. Think about that.
It's not very big in comparison to these, hundreds of year old trees, but actually it's so much more important in many respects, isn't it, in what it does? Yeah,
for the area it covers, it's a massive benefit, and not just like you said about oxygen and reducing carbon dioxide. When you actually look into the blades of seagrass themselves, there's a lot of juvenile fish species which are commercially important. So juvenile cod, plaice, all these different ones actually use this as their nursery ground as well. So it makes it biodiverse in terms of the smaller species. You do obviously get the big ones, but you got to look a bit closer in seagrass to see really the tiny little juvenile species.
So for me then, as an underwater photographer, I'll be looking at you to give me like the pointers where I get my macro lens and fire that in, and hopefully not ruin a shot or ruin anyone's house.
Yeah, it is a challenge, but it's good. But I think part of the expedition, we've spoken before about it, is it's probably going to be easier for us to go there with snorkel or try and hit lower water so we can see it a bit easier, because logistics with diving, the spot is a bit more challenging compared to those other locations. But still, it's a really good way of actually exploring the seagrass is snorkeling. And it's a really nice sense of freedom, because it's a very different habitat compared to the usual sand or reefs and things. So it almost feels tropical if you get the right bit. And whilst we're down the shade, we'll head to actually get some diving in. We'll go to Porthyscadon, which is somewhere you've been and enjoy. And it's a great little site for everyone just to get just a bit of taste of what it's like diving here in North Wales, to be honest.
Yeah, awesome. Well, get one more shameless plug in then, because Ollie's already done one, and then Lloyd's going to probably talk about it in a bit, about your upcoming series that you've been producing.
Oh, Wales Best of the West.
If that's what you want to call it, yeah?
Yeah, no, so the part of that series was the online series we've done between, me, Ollie and Lloyd. And we're kind of taking people on a journey up to 4 different sites across Wales, all accessible. That was the point of the series, of trying to show people you don't have to go up miles and miles out of the coast. You can just go off the shore. And one of them, well, both sites, one of them is Porthyscadon, where we'll go. And then the other is Porthynllyn, which is slightly not as accessible, but when it can be dove, you can dive it. But then the other two are down in South Wales, which is Martin's Haven, Wales' deepest shore dive, and then Stackpole Quay, which again is an amazing little site there. But all sites chosen because of the accessibility, uniqueness, and just really nice shore dives. So looking forward to show that later, and probably coming up in the next month or so, we can release it, and it'll be bilingual too. The challenge is that we try to make it identical, both English and Welsh. So all the audio is tried to be underwater, even though it's been long dives, some dives 2.5 hours, where you're trying to say everything in English and then quickly put it into Welsh so you don't forget what you just said. So that was a challenge. So we're going back to the audio, we're going, damn, I missed that sentence or missed that. But it's close enough to almost be identical content-wise as well. So it should be cool.
Nice. I think the 2 sites that you mentioned down in Pembrokeshire, from speaking to Lloyd, I think we're diving them.
Yeah, they're quite nice. Again, straightforward, lot to see, but not too challenging or logistically challenging to get to them as well. Because, like Porthynllyn's a bit of a difficult one, but those 2 are great.
Definitely, if that visibility and the weather's anything like it was when I dived up there a couple of weeks ago, it's going to be immense, mate. So I'm really looking forward to going back there and showing everyone that I keep telling about Porthyscadon how good it is, that showing them actually that it is that. And then it's been a few years since I've snorkeled the other place. I don't want to try and say it because I sound rubbish trying to talk Welsh. But yeah, thanks for that, mate. See you later. So then we're going to move down to Pembrokeshire, where we're going to meet up initially with Lloyd Jones, who's also been on the podcast. And you're going to take us around your sort of neck of the woods, mate, and show us what's going on down there, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, hopefully the weather will improve by then, because it's quite rubbish at the moment down here. I'm an underwater videographer based in Pembrokeshire, and I'll be heading up some of the underwater cleaner part of the project then. So my involvement will be mainly with Neptune's Army Rubbish Cleaners, and it'll be my job to show you all the rubbish side of the project then. So we're going to be taking you to 2 lovely sites. One is a horrible one, hopefully, which is a fly tipping site. And things we've had in there from the past include large lobster pots, patio slabs, oil drums, toilets, and a Mitsubishi Colt as well. So lots of variety there in terms of items that really shouldn't be there. And hopefully it'll give you a better idea of some of the stuff that gets thrown into the sea. And hopefully, if the weather improves and we get some nice visibility, we'll take you down to a really nice site down on the south coast of Thames, Stackpole Quay. Ollie and Jake have been there already then. It's a really nice site. There also has a lot of angling litter there. So it'll be an opportunity then to delve in amongst the reef and stuff and find some monofilament line usually, maybe the odd discarded lobster pot, but a lot of loose lead weight as well hidden along the reef. And it's one of NARC's hotspots for fishing weights. I think the last big haul we had from there a few years back was around 700 odd fishing weights in one 40-minute dive between 12 divers. So we'll hopefully try and beat that total this time round with us. So Neptune's Army of Rubbish Cleaners, or NARC for short, are the UK's first underwater cleanup group. They've been operating since 2005 and mainly focusing on the West Wales coastline. In that time then, we've evolved from a voluntary group of divers to a charity, and we've also moved a bit further afield as well, not only diving around Pembrokeshire, we've also been further afield in Cornwall with Fathoms Free, assisting them on underwater cleanups. And we've also had a delegation of NARC volunteers head out to Greece to do a series of underwater cleanups there, and also Sri Lanka.
Awesome,
well,
mate.
I'm just wondering if you should come up to one of the dives in Loch Duich then, mate, because we call it the rubbish dump, and it's the same as a fly tipping site, and it's been used for years and years. So there's at least 4 vehicles there. There's 3 cars and a lorry cab, and like yours, there's fridge freezers, computers, wheelbarrows, cement mixers, laptops, toilet. And bags of bones. That's a good one. We've never actually discovered what the bones are. We're thinking possibly either dead dogs or roadkill. There's some protected goats that live wild around Loch Duich, and we think if they get hit by cars, folk get in trouble, so they bag them up and chuck them in the sea. Of course, it could be human bones, but I've never delved too far into the sea. But that's a really interesting site as well. Always lots of monofilament line and stuff there too. We quite often rescue live animals that are still caught on the hooks. But that's a really interesting dive, the rubbish dump in Loch Duich.
It might be a fly tipping thing, because in Hobbs Point as well, we found bags of bones and sacks of discarded carcasses and things from spider crabs, which will still be there. I mean, I first dived on the spider crab mass back in 2007, and when I went back in 2019, it was still there. So it just gets larger and larger, which is quite disconcerting when you see it. Actually, we've got loads of stuff there, things you wouldn't expect to see, but at the same time you get lobsters entangled, spider crabs, you'll get conger eels tangled up, and then 2 meters around the side will be a massive, really nice size anemone with some nudibranchs on it, and then it's just going further up the river, so it's almost like a little mismatch. You get some horrible stuff, you get some nice stuff. So you almost get like a little surprise for doing a good cleanup.
Fantastic. I love us a good surprise, Lloyd. Thanks for that. And next we're going to be joined on this particular leg of the expedition by Charlie Young. You may have seen her all over Instagram, or she's now representing BSAC with the YouTube channel as it's been revamped. So Charlie, tell us what's exciting you about this expedition.
So something that I think's amazing about this expedition is that we're going to be highlighting the work of 3 really important projects on the west coast of the UK. And the one that I'm going to be highlighting is the NARC project. And so they go out and essentially collect ghost gear and debris from our coastal seas. And this is so important because around 1,105 harbour porpoises die in UK fishing gear each year. Throughout British waters. And what's really scary is that the real number is probably a lot higher. And that estimate doesn't include, a lot of UK fleets or those other nations that fish within UK waters. And also there's consequences for this gear just being left behind. Other species such as seals and then smaller crustaceans and invertebrates obviously can ingest plastic that's in our oceans. So in general, I think it's really important for us to raise awareness for this specific project and the incredible work that they're doing locally to try and reduce this type of pollution around Pembrokeshire's waters, but also to raise awareness of the wider impact that ghost gear and fishing nets and entanglement can have on marine life.
You know what I didn't realise until starting this is how much stuff just gets sort of fly tipped into the ocean.
Yeah.
You know, there's certainly going to be one up in Scotland, and then there's this one in Wales that we're going to, both sort of nicknamed the rubbish dump. I had no idea because I don't live right on the coast.
Yeah.
You just tend to get fly tipped in the countryside or down an old farmer's lane and that. I was pretty shocked at how much we're going to get that's not just cast fishing gear. Crazy,
it's all out of sight, out of mind, and like you say, people can easily just turn up at the coast, chuck some stuff off the cliff. You know, that I've known divers to find, you know, washing machines, bits of, you know, cars, house appliances. The other day, Ollie and I found a part of a leg chair when diving down in Babbacombe, and people really do use it as a dumping ground, and even fishing boats as well. When they don't want to take their rubbish back to land, they'll just dump it over the side. And the problem is that once it's sunk to the bottom or once it's in the ocean, quite often we don't see the full extent of the issue, and it's not until wonderful teams like NARC go out and actually purposefully try to find it that we realize just how polluted these areas are.
It's crazy, isn't it? Well, I'm glad that you've been able to come and sort of help us highlight that, especially as it's local to you, really, isn't it? Pembrokeshire, that's where you're from.
Kind of. I mean, born and raised in Pembrokeshire, so definitely from Pembrokeshire, but was extracted a little bit later on, and so spent some time in Spain.
And with you, Ollie Velasco, a guy who I met on my HSE Pro Scuba last year, he's going to be joining us. So what's the story, Ollie?
So, I guess the thing that excites me most about the expedition is highlighting what we've got on our doorstep in the UK in terms of marine wildlife. And that's kind of something I'm really super passionate about, and I've been really passionate about for a while, is just getting people to realize that they don't need to travel halfway across the world to have these incredible experiences. They can do so much just a couple of hours drive away from where they live. And I think raising awareness of that is great for a couple of reasons. It kind of helps in an environmental perspective, because it means you don't need to take as many flights to remote places just because they're tropical, in inverted commas.
Yeah.
And also it just gets people kind of outside more and excited about the wildlife that we've got, and if you do that, then it means you can kind of protect it more easily because you've got more people kind of fighting for it. And so that's why I guess I'm excited about this trip, because as Charlie said, it's the three really important projects. The kind of scientific reasons behind them as well are really sound. And so kind of looking forward to getting involved in that capacity. And I'll be taking some photos and videos of the work that's going on, and of the expedition itself, and hoping that kind of inspires more people to have similar adventures and to get involved with similar projects.
Nice one, Ollie. Thanks for that, mate. And last but by no means least is my dive buddy for the entire expedition, Shotgun Mike. Take it away, Mike. Tell us who you are and what you're planning to do, what you have done for this expedition, and what you've had to do in order to be part of it.
Hi, I'm Mike. I'm a graphic designer. I run a design business in Standish and live around the corner from Andy. I'm a recreational diver. I've got my PADI open water certification in the Maldives back in 2006 whilst on the honeymoon. My wife got certified too, so it's not like I left her at the bar on her own drinking mojitos all day. I don't think I've dived anywhere as nice since, so I think I peaked early. I certainly haven't seen any manta rays since. Having said that, I did have a hiatus from diving for about 8 years, as my wife didn't fancy doing it anymore, and I didn't know any divers, and I didn't have any dive kit. Then I met Andy, who lived opposite the road at the time, and when he started diving, I got back in the water too. So I got involved in the expedition when Andy started talking about his big idea he's having. It sounded quite interesting, actually, and coupled with the fact that we're in lockdown and couldn't get in the water, it seemed a great way to not just get back into diving this year, but to get to know more about our waters, rather than just being a passive observer. Plus, the wife has given me a 10-day pass to do this, which is a bonus. I helped out with the initial funding proposal and the general marketing assets to help bring the idea to life. I also work with some outdoor brands, and I'm keen to explore routes in which brands can support conservation efforts like these. And due to the nature of the proposed dives on the expedition and the more time I'm spending in the water generally, I'm currently doing a raid course that will certify me to 35 metres, which should allow more variety of diving going forwards. I'm looking forward to the expedition and meeting the whole team and learning about what's happening on our UK doorstep.
Mate, I can't thank you enough for being part of this exped. I know it's took a lot of time, and certainly Emily's been really supportive of it, but you've kind of been my right-hand man throughout the planning and the progression of the sort of planning stages of the expedition. So thanks very much, mate, for putting all this effort in, time and money. And no doubt we'll spend a lot more time together over the next week or so. I'll see you in a bit. So there you go. That's the team as part of Expedition Western Ecology Tour, or Expedition Wet. This is the first big expedition that I've planned. I've had lots of input from all these different guests on today's podcast, which without them and without their impetus, I really couldn't be running such a high sort of interest, high impact and high profile expedition. So thanks to all of you for coming along. Really appreciate it, and I look forward to diving with you next week. Now what I want to do is thank all of our expedition sponsors. There's so many of them that have been so generous. So to start off with, the first company that got behind us was Analox, who donated quite generously an analyzer, an O2 E2 Pro, so we can all make sure we've got safe breathing gas. Second to that was Northern Diver, who've been a supporter of the work that I do, whether it be on YouTube or on this podcast. They've given us a load of dry bags and then a load of lift bags to go and give off to NARC to help them continue with their work. So thanks very much, especially big shout out to Cara there. Then we went and got a load of support from Stream to Sea, who create products that are ocean marine life friendly, and they've given us a load of hand sanitizer and mask clearer. Obviously in these times of like the pandemic, it's really important that we can stay clean, so keep those bugs off our hands and that, so the hand sanitizer works perfectly for that. So thanks very much. Next up was Gear Aid. So that's Norman over at Gear Aid Europe, but it's actually Gear Aid is a company that's sponsoring us, and they've given us loads of cleaning products and stuff to put in a raffle, which I'll talk about at the end of the podcast. Then Dry Robe got involved, and oh my word, did they help us out. So they've given us not only a load of dry robes to keep us warm on the water side, but they've also given us another dry robe to give out as part of the raffle. So massive shout out to them. And then Medina Journals was a company that I'm quite new to, but Mike's company's been involved with, and they've given us a couple of journals to put in the raffle. They're either leather or linen bound. They're really nice high-end notepads. They come in A5 and A6, so thanks to them. Hannah, who works alongside Finisterre, managed to sort of secure us a voucher for £150, so that's gone into the raffle. And then Hannah and Ollie managed to secure even more support from a company they work with from over in the US called Neptunic. They make sort of rash vests and shark suits, you know, the ones that stop you getting bitten. And they've supported us by giving us a big, generous bag full of T-shirts for us all to wear and a few bits and pieces to put into the raffle. Then I reached out myself to O3 that support Jake, Ollie and Lloyd, and they really kindly gave us a load of hats, stickers and products that they have in order to try and drum up more support for our sort of fundraising raffle. So big shout out to, I think it was Tom I spoke to. Last but not least, big shout out to Chris at Canary Divers. It's a dive centre local to me that's lent us some O2 rescue kits for if any of us do get into any problems whilst we're on the dives. We've got some O2 rescue equipment on the shore side that we can just administer straight away to everyone. So why are we doing this? It's not only to raise the awareness and publicise the 3 projects that are going on, but it's to try and raise a little bit of money to help them do the work that they do. We've not only got a feature to go in BSAC's Scuba magazine, thanks to Simon Rogerson, we're also going to create a series of films to go on my YouTube channel and the others that are involved in the expedition to use within their social media campaigns. So it'll hopefully shed a lot of light on UK diving, not only for how good it is, but then to show the conservation projects that are really important to our coastlines. So if you can support us in any way, shape or form, go to the JustGiving main page, search Western Ecology Tour, and you should see Expedition Wet as its own page there. If you click onto that and you donate anything from £5 onwards and enter the hashtag Expedition Wet into the comments, making sure that your name is visible and it's not anonymous. You'll be automatically entered into the prize draw. Looking on my website, which is andythenortherndiver.com, you'll see all the prizes, the sponsors, the people involved, and as much information as you could possibly want to gather about the expedition and me if you really care. And hopefully you'll be a winner. So I want to thank you for listening to the podcast. Hopefully it's been some interest to you, maybe inspire you to get involved, make your own expedition up, or get involved in a type of diving that we're doing. Thanks for listening, and don't forget, #expeditionwet. Make sure you subscribe so you can see all the content that this expedition generates. See you later. Thanks very much to this week's guest for sharing their stories and interesting tales about the underwater world. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I did recording it. For more information on this episode, take a look at the description below. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, and follow us on Instagram for the latest news. Thanks again to Northern Diver International and those of you who have supported me through Patreon. Take care, and I'll see you on YouTube.